I never thought silence could hurt more than words. But it does. It cuts sharper, digs deeper, when it comes from someone you once held in your arms, someone whose heartbeat once matched yours in rhythm and warmth, someone whose laughter once filled your quiet house, and whose tears you once wiped away, thinking you could protect her from everything. The last time I saw my granddaughter, she stood at the door of her big house. The door was white. So white it almost shone, almost seemed to glow. Clean, too clean. Like nothing sad had ever passed through it, like pain and struggle were words she had never known, or had chosen to forget. She smiled at me. Not a warm smile, not the one that would wrap you up in comfort when you were little and frightened. This was polite, quick, precise, like a stranger saying hello, nodding and stepping aside. "Take care, Grandma," she said. Her words were clipped, neat, delivered like a line in a script. I have a lot to do today." And then the door closed. No hug. No, come again. No, sit for a while, have some tea. I stood there, frozen, holding my purse with both hands as if the leather could anchor me to reality. I told myself not to cry. Old women cry too easily, people say. So I smiled instead, a small, careful smile, one that didn't reach my eyes. But inside, my heart ached, pounding as if it might break under the weight of all those unspoken words. As I walked down her shiny steps, my mind wandered. I remembered another door. A wooden one. Paint peeling, cracks along the frame where the wind found its way in. That was the door of the house where I raised her. Where we had nothing but each other. Nothing but love, patience, and endless nights filled with whispered stories and quiet laughter. I remember standing by that door, watching her little fingers trace the grooves in the wood as she asked 1,000 questions. "Why is the sky blue, Grandma?" she asked, eyes wide with wonder. "Why don't we have a car like other people? Why can't we go to the park every day?" And I would smile, brushing her hair back, whispering, "We have what we need, darling. Sometimes love is enough. One day you'll understand." People see her now and say, "She made it." They talk about her cars, her house, the fancy trips she takes, her name in the papers. They don't see the nights I spent sewing her dresses with mismatched fabric, because that was all I could afford. They don't see the mornings I waited by the kitchen window, hoping she would wake up happy even when the cupboard was bare. They don't see the cold nights I shivered beside her bed, holding her hand until she fell asleep, whispering prayers that she would be safe, that she would grow to shine. And maybe she doesn't either. I don't blame her. That is what I tell myself when the nights are long and quiet, when my pillow soaks up my tears. But some days, the quiet feels heavier than blame. It presses down on me like the weight of all the words we never said, all the hugs we didn't share. I reach out in my mind, hopping, wishing, "Come back to me just for a moment. Can you remember?" But the silence answers only with its emptiness. I tell myself, this is not a story about anger. This is a story about distance. About how love can stretch so far that it almost breaks, how bonds once unshakable can fray at the edges. This is the story of how I raised my granddaughter with nothing, and how one day she stopped looking back. I remember the nights I stayed awake listening to her soft breathing, thinking, "I will always be here for you. Always." I remember the mornings when she would run into my arms, her face pressed against mine, laughing at some little joy she found in the broken world around us. "Grandma, promise me you'll never be sad," she would say, tugging at my sleeve. "And I promise you'll always be my little girl." And now, that same girl, all grown and shining in the world, doesn't recognize the hands that held her, the arms that comforted her. Does she even remember the stories we told, the songs we sang, the small, tender moments that shaped her before the world shaped her? I don't know, and maybe that's the hardest part. So I walk away from her door, carrying my memories like a fragile bundle, trying not to let the hurt spill over. Trying not to let the silence win. This is the story of love. Love that gives everything and asks nothing in return. Love that stretches weights and sometimes aches. I became a grandmother before I felt ready to be one. Life does not ask permission. It only arrives, suddenly, like a storm you can't see coming, leaving behind puddles and quiet, soaked memories that cling to the soul. My daughter had her young. Too young, people whispered behind their hands. The father disappeared before the baby even learned to walk. Just like that, gone. I remember the night my daughter came home, carrying a small bundle wrapped in a faded blanket. The baby was asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling like a fragile little drum. Her face was soft, untouched by the world. Her hands were closed tight, as if she was holding on to something invisible, something only she could feel. My daughter sat at the kitchen table and cried without making a sound. Her shoulders shook gently, and I could feel the weight of her exhaustion, her fear, her helplessness pressing down on me too. I put water on the stove. I lit a small lamp. I didn't ask questions. Some things are too raw for questions anyway. "Grandma, what do I do?" she whispered finally, her voice trembling. I didn't answer right away. I just took her hand and said, "We'll figure it out together, one step at a time." She nodded, leaning into me, her tears dampening my sleeve. I don't even know how to feed her sometimes," she admitted. I squeezed her hand. "We'll learn. Don't worry, my child, I've got you both." From that night on, the baby became part of my days. And slowly, part of my heart. We lived in a small house. 2 rooms, 1 kitchen. The roof leaked when it rained, and the wind found its way through the cracks, rattling the windows like it was trying to tell us something. I worked wherever I could, cleaning, cooking, sometimes sewing late into the night while she slept beside me, small and trusting. She would press her face into my arm when storms came and whisper, "Grandma, don't let the rain take the house." I would hold her closer and say, "Nothing will take us, nothing ever will." Even when I wasn't sure. We had routines, simple ones stitched together by love, patience, and necessity. I woke her for school every morning, braided her hair with careful hands, humming softly so the day would start gentle. Made sure her shoes fit, even when mine did not. I remember one morning, she tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, will you stay with me until the bus comes?" "Of course, my little star," I whispered, holding her hand tightly. "I'll be right here." She squeezed my hand back, smiling sleepily, as if that small moment could carry her through the day. "Promise you'll wait?" she asked, blinking her big eyes. "Always," I replied. "I'll wait for you every morning." She loved stories. At night, she would lie beside me, eyes wide and curious. "Tell me about when you were young," she would say, tugging the blanket closer, as if my voice could shield her from the dark. "And were you ever afraid?" she asked one night, clutching my hand. And I told her about fields, about hard work, about mistakes that taught lessons. About nights when hunger pressed against our ribs, and mornings when hope felt thinner than bread. "Grandma, were you ever scared?" she asked again, her small voice trembling. "All the time," I admitted, brushing her hair back. "But we keep going, don't we?" She nodded, absorbing the answer like a sponge, trusting me completely. "Even when it's hard?" she asked. "Especially then," I said, kissing her forehead softly. Sometimes she would ask quietly, "Will I always live here, Grandma?" I would look at her, still so small, and say, "No, child, you will go far." I meant it as hope, not a goodbye. She smiled faintly, but I saw her little mind spinning, dreaming of a world bigger than our small house. My daughter struggled. She tried, but life kept pushing her back. Slowly, the child became more mine than hers. It was me who went to school meetings. It was me who sat beside hospital beds. It was me who stayed awake when she had fever and fear in her eyes. She called me Grandma, but she held my hand like a mother. And often, late at night, she would whisper, "Grandma, will you always be here?" And I would squeeze her hand and say, "Always, my love, always." When she was 10, she asked why we didn't have more. More food, More clothes, more space. Her eyes searched mine for some magic answer, a secret I could give her. I told her the truth. We do the best we can. She nodded. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said softly, "Then I will work harder. I'll help us." I felt a pang in my heart, seeing the determination in her young eyes. "You don't have to carry it all alone, my darling. I'm here too." "I know," she said, hugging my arm tightly. From that day on, I noticed something change. She studied harder, stayed quieter, watched the world with careful, calculating eyes. She learned early that money opens doors, even before she knew how to knock. When she left for college, I cried alone in the kitchen, holding my hands over my face. The house felt too big and too empty at the same time. She promised to call. She did at first. Her voice was bright on the phone, telling me about classes, new friends, little victories. Then the calls became shorter. Then less often. She was busy, I understood. Life had a way of carrying her forward, faster than I could keep up. She finished school, got a job, then another, then more. People started saying her name differently, with respect, with pride. I felt proud too, very proud. But pride has a quiet side. One that sits with you at night, pressing against your chest like a reminder of everything you've done and everything you've lost. I would whisper to myself sometimes, "I did my best, did I?" When I visited her the first time, she lived in a small apartment. She hugged me then, made tea, listened to my stories. I felt the warmth in her smile, the spark that had always been there. The second time, the apartment was bigger. The hug was shorter. The tea was poured with more haste, more attention to other things. The third time, she had a house. That was the house with the white door. And that was when I realized something had changed forever. She had grown into the world, into success, into recognition. But somewhere along the way, the little girl who once clung to my arm had disappeared behind walls of pride, ambition, and careful polish. She no longer needed me in the same way. And maybe she never would again. I stood at that white door and remembered every storm, every meal we shared, every whispered word in the dark. I wanted to call her name, to reach her again, but the door remained closed. And in that silence, I understood that love is sometimes quiet. It waits, it stretches, it aches. The distance did not come all at once. It was not a door slamming shut. I think I could have handled that better. A slammed door makes a sound. You can hear the anger, the finality. You know where you stand. No, this was worse. This distance came like fog. It arrived slowly, creeping in during the night so that when you woke up, you couldn't see the path anymore. You couldn't see the house next door. You couldn't see the person standing right beside you. So slowly that at first I thought it was nothing. Just a little fog. It'll burn off by noon, I told myself. At the beginning, it was just missed calls. I had my routine. I'd finish my chores, the washing up, the sweeping, wiping down the little table where we used to eat together. Then, as the clock touched 7, I'd sit in my chair by the window, the one with the worn cushion that fit me just right. I'd take a deep breath, pick up the phone, and dial her number. My finger remembered the pattern. Ring. 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 Sometimes she answered, "Hi, Grandma," and my whole evening would light up. Sometimes the phone just rang and rang in my ear, a lonely sound that went on forever until it clicked over to her voicemail. "You've reached Alara. Leave a message." And sometimes she'd pick up, but her voice was already somewhere else. "Grandma, hi, can I call you right back? I'm right in the middle of something." When she did call back, maybe an hour later, maybe the next day when I was doing the breakfast dishes, her voice sounded tired, thin, busy, like she was standing in a big, echoing room and my words had to travel too far to reach her. There was always a sound behind her, the blare of a car horn from her city street, the chatter of a cafe, the soft tap-tap-tap of her computer keys, a whole world of noise that didn't include me. "I'll call you properly later, Grandma," she would promise, her words coming out in a rush. And I would hug the phone to my ear and answer, "Of course, my star, take your time." I meant it. I always did. I wanted her to have all the time in the world. But later became a tricky word. Later slipped through my fingers like water. Later often did not come, or when it did, it was a 5-minute chat while she walked somewhere, her breath a little short. Later became a gentle, polite ghost. When she started earning real money, making moves, as she called it, the envelopes began to arrive. Every month, like clockwork. A clean, white envelope with her name printed neatly in the corner. No note inside, just crisp bills. The first time I held one, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. It felt all wrong. This wasn't what my hands were for. These were hands that had braided hair and patted backs and kneaded bread dough. They weren't meant for holding this kind of gift. It felt cold. I called her. "Ilara, listen to me. This is not why I raised you," I said, my voice soft but firm. I needed her to understand. "I didn't change your diapers and walk you to school so you could pay me back like I'm a bill." She gave that little laugh of hers, the one that didn't have any joy in it. "Grandma, don't be so dramatic, it's nothing. It's just a little help. Use it, please, get yourself something nice." I could picture her, leaning back in her office chair, maybe spinning it slightly, her mind already halfway onto her next email. The money was just a task checked off her list. So with a heavy heart, I used it. I bought the better arthritis medicine that didn't make my stomach hurt. I finally hired a man to properly fix the roof leak that had plagued us for 20 years. I bought a new, thick winter coat that actually kept the chill out. They were small comforts I had never allowed myself before. I had always put her first, shoes for her, coats for her, books for her. Now, I was using her money to fill the spaces she had left empty. But something about it felt strange. Hollow. It was help, yes. But it was help sent from an office, not from the heart. It didn't come with a hug. It didn't come with her sitting at my table, asking how I was really feeling. It felt like love had been quietly, efficiently turned into a duty, a monthly duty. I began to notice the new shape of her words. Her conversations became like carefully arranged flowers, pretty to look at, but with no roots, no scent. They were polite, so very polite. "How are you feeling today, Grandma? Is your back any better? Did it rain there today? I heard there might be storms." She asked the surface questions, the safe ones. But she did not ask about my days, not the way that mattered. She didn't ask, "What made you laugh today, Grandma?" Or "Did you see the crazy blue jay at the bird feeder?" Or "Tell me about your walk, what did you see?" She didn't say, "Grandma, tell me that story about the time I got lost at the market again." The questions that showed she was swimming in the river of my life with me, that she cared about the current and the stones on the bottom, those questions had dried up. The next time I visited her, the difference hit me like a physical thing, a change in the air pressure. Her house wasn't just a house, it was a statement. Large, so bright with white walls and huge windows it almost hurt my old eyes. And the quiet, it was a deep, expensive quiet, the kind that swallows sound. Too quiet. I missed the creak of our old floorboards. I missed the hum of my ancient refrigerator. This silence felt dead. I walked slowly, my socks silent on the cool wooden floors. I looked at the walls. They were smooth and bare. No pictures of us. No silly drawing I'd saved from her first grade. No photo of her graduation of me standing beside her with tears in my eyes. No memories hung there. It was clean. It was perfect. It was a museum of her success, and I was a visitor from the past who didn't belong in the exhibits. I had brought a piece of home with me, a pot of her favorite beef stew, the kind that simmered all day, wrapped in towels to keep it warm. The smell had filled my old car on the drive over. She took the pot. "Oh, Grandma, you shouldn't have gone to all this trouble." She gave me a quick smile, then opened her massive stainless steel refrigerator. It was mostly empty, some bottles of water, a container of salad. She slid my pot of stew onto a shelf and closed the door. She didn't open the lid to smell it. She didn't say, "Oh, I remember this." "We usually eat out or order something in," she said, turning back to me. She wasn't being mean. She was just stating a fact about her new life. It was a fact that left no room for my stew or the love it was made with. I sat on her enormous white sofa. It was so soft and deep I felt like I was sinking. I perched on the edge, my back straight, my hands folded tightly in my lap. I didn't know where to put myself. I felt like a piece of old, mismatched furniture that had been delivered to the wrong address. She talked. She told me about her quarterly reviews and market expansions. She talked about flying to the coast for networking. She mentioned names, Chad, Stephanie, Marcus, people who were clearly important to her but were just sounds to me. I nodded. I smiled. I said, "That's wonderful, dear." But inside, a small, desperate voice was crying out, "Look at me. Just for a minute, look at me and see your grandma. Talk to me about the weather, really talk. Ask me about Mrs. Finch's new dog. Anything. Just be here with me." That night, I slept in a guest room. The bed was wider than my whole old bedroom. The sheets were 1,000 threads per inch, but I lay stiff as a board, staring at the perfectly smooth ceiling. I missed our lumpy old mattress. I missed the sound of her breathing next to me when she was small and would crawl into my bed after a bad dream. I missed the weight of her hand clutching my nightgown. That was real. This was like sleeping in a magazine, beautiful and cold. In the morning, she was a whirlwind. Dressed in a sharp, black outfit, hair sleek, clicking around the kitchen in heels. She was already late. "Big presentation today," she said, grabbing a green drink from the fridge. She came over, gave me a quick, dry kiss on the cheek. "We'll catch up properly later, I promise." Later came for about 12 minutes that evening before a work call buzzed on her phone. She held up a finger. "1 sec, Grandma," and took it. She never came back. One afternoon, my loneliness got the better of my pride. We were sitting on her terrace. The sun was shining, but I felt chilled. I reached for a memory, hopping to pull us both back to warmer ground. "Do you remember," I began, my voice gentle, "our old kitchen, that little yellow tile by the stove that was always loose, and how the roof would leak right over the table when the rain was heavy? We'd have to move everything and put the big soup pot there to catch the drip, drip, drip." She laughed. It was a light, breezy sound. "Oh, Grandma," she said, shaking her head with a smile. "Don't remind me of that place. It was so cramped and always so drafty in the winter. I don't know how we lived there." She said it like she was talking about a bad hotel she'd stayed in once long ago. Her words were simple, just an observation, but they landed in the center of my chest and stayed there, heavy and cold. I smiled. I always smile. It's my armor. But inside, something vital crumpled. It folded in on itself quietly, like a paper flower closing for the night. That house was my heart. Every leak, every crack, every worn spot on the floor was a mark of our life together. It had sheltered us. It had been our whole world. And to her, it was just cramped, a place to be forgotten. After that visit, the invitations slowed, then trickled, then stopped. I was always the one waiting. I would never, ever invite myself. I didn't want to be a burden. Months would stretch between her calls. The silence wasn't angry. It was just empty. A vast, quiet space where our connection used to be. When I gathered the courage to call her, her "hello, Grandma" was different. Still polite, still kind. But it came from a faraway planet. There was no warmth in it, just the echo of what warmth used to be. Once, during a particularly long, gray week when the silence in my house was louder than any noise, I broke my own rule. I called her. "Alara, it's Grandma." My voice sounded small, even to me. I was just thinking, the weather is nice here. Maybe I could come visit for a little while, just a few days." The pause on the other end was so long I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard her sigh. It was a tired sound. "Oh, Grandma, now is not a good time. It's just chaos here. A huge project is due. Maybe another time." My throat tightened. "Of course," I whispered, the words sticking. "I understand, another time." Another time hung in the air between us, a vague, empty promise. It never took shape. It never became a date on the calendar. I stopped asking. I told myself, she is building her magnificent life. This is what you wanted. This is what you worked for. Do not be the old, needy rock that the river of her success has to flow around. Be proud. Be quiet. So I filled my days. I gardened until the dirt was deep under my nails and my knees ached. I cooked big pots of soup and took bowls to my neighbors. I sat by my window for hours, watching the birds, watching the mailman, watching life happen without me. I'd see Mrs. Clark's grandson, Tommy, run up her path after school, his backpack flying. He'd throw his arms around her waist and she'd ruffle his hair. I'd see old Mr. Jenkins' daughter come every Sunday with her kids, and they'd all sit on his porch laughing. I would smile. A big, genuine, warm smile for them. And then I'd turn back to my empty room, and I'd swallow down the lump of longing in my throat. It was a bitter pill. Mrs. Clark saw me watching one evening from her yard. She called over. "You must be so proud of your Alara. We read about her in the business section. Such a success story." I nodded, my smile fixed in place. "Yes," I called back, my voice bright. "I am so very proud." And I was. That was the terrible, beautiful truth. Pride and a deep, aching pain could live in the very same room in my heart. They could sit at the same table. I learned to serve them both. The real change, the one that carved the deepest valley, didn't come with shouting. It came on a day that was supposed to be all light. It was her birthday. I turned my little kitchen into a temple of memory. I baked her cake, the exact vanilla cake from the old recipe in my head. I beat the butter and sugar until they were pale and fluffy, just like my mother taught me. I folded in the flour carefully. The smell, that warm, sweet, buttery smell, wrapped around me like a hug from the past. It filled every corner of my small, quiet house. I had a gift, a simple photo album. I'd spent weeks finding the pictures, arranging them in order. Her as a baby in my arms, her first day of school, her hand in mine. Her 10th birthday at our old table, the cake just like this one. Me, younger, brushing her hair. Us. Nothing from a store could ever cost as much as the care in that album. My heart was a little bird fluttering in my chest. It was her day. I called at noon, when I thought she might be on a lunch break. Voicemail. I tried again at 3, maybe for a quick afternoon chat. Voicemail. The fluttering in my chest grew still, then heavy. I sent a text, a simple one. "Happy birthday to my brilliant girl. I love you more than all the stars. I made your cake." I added a heart and a slice of cake emoji, the way she used to do when she texted me about her lunch. Then I waited. I sat in my chair by the window with the cake and the album on the table beside me. The sun painted a bright square on the floor, then slowly climbed the wall, then faded to gold, then to gray. The room grew dark. I didn't turn on the lamp. I just sat in the fading light, watching the phone that didn't ring. Hours passed. The cake sat there. The album sat there. My hope sat there, growing cold. Late that night, when the darkness was complete, my phone finally lit up and vibrated on the table. I grabbed it with both hands. "Hello." "Hi, Grandma." Her voice was flat, distant. I could hear music and voices in the background, a party. "I made your cake," I blurted out, the words tumbling out with all my lonely waiting attached to them. "That's sweet of you," she said. There was another pause. "Thank you. I've been swamped all day. Back-to-back meetings, then the team took me out for dinner and drinks. It's still going." That was it. That was the whole conversation. No, how are you? No, I miss your cake. No, I wish you were here. No laughter about the time the cake fell when she slammed the door. Just thank you. And an explanation for her silence that sounded like a list of her importance. "I see," I said softly, the last of the light inside me going out. "Well, I'm glad they celebrated you. You deserve it." We said quick goodbyes. The line went dead. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I looked at the perfect, uneaten cake. I got a plate. I cut a slice. I sat at my table alone and took a bite. It was perfectly baked, moist, flavorful. It tasted like absolutely nothing, like ash. That night, for the first time in years, the tears came. Silent, hot streams down my face in the dark. I didn't cry because she was rude or ungrateful. I cried because she was forgetting the recipe of our life, forgetting the taste of home, forgetting the hands that held her up before she ever learned to stand on her own in that big, busy world. And still I said nothing. I swallowed the words, the hurt, the loneliness. I never wanted my love to feel like a guilt trip. Guilt is a chain made of lead. It's heavier than any ocean of distance. I would drown in my own quiet sorrow before I would ever hang that chain around her neck. Then, on a perfectly normal Thursday, my phone rang. It was her. Her voice was odd, stiff, formal, like she was reading from a script she didn't like. "Grandma, it's me." Ilara, hello, my star. My heart leapt at the sound of her name. I need to talk to you, she said, each word measured. About something important. Can you come out here? A wild, foolish hope exploded inside me. It was like a sun rising after a decade of winter. She needs me. After all the distance, all the silence, she needs to talk to me. She needs her grandma. Of course, my child, I said, my voice thick with instant, forgiving love. Of course I'll come, I'll be there. I packed my small suitcase with trembling, excited hands. I folded my best dress, the blue one she said looked nice on me years ago. I put the photo album in my bag. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe seeing our faces would be the bridge. I prepared myself for happiness, for a reunion, for my girl to find her way back through the fog and need me again. I was so busy preparing my heart for joy, I didn't notice the chill in her voice. I did not know, I could not have let myself believe, that I wasn't packing for a visit. I was packing my heart, neatly and carefully, for its final breaking. I arrived at her house in the late afternoon. The drive felt longer than usual. Every traffic light, every turn seemed to stretch out, giving me too much time to think. The sky was pale. Not blue, not gray, just pale. The kind of pale that comes before rain, when the air feels heavy and still, like the world is holding its breath. She opened the door herself. No need for a housekeeper, not at this hour. The same white door stood before me, so clean it seemed to glow. And there she was. The same polite smile on her face, the kind you give to a delivery person or a distant acquaintance. "Come in, Grandma," she said, stepping back to make space. Her voice was calm, too calm. It had no highs, no lows. It was flat like water without a ripple. I stepped inside, my old shoes quiet on the polished floor. And I felt that quiet again. That deep, expensive quiet that doesn't belong to a home, but to a waiting room. A place where people sit without talking, just passing time until their name is called. "Would you like some tea?" she asked, already walking toward the kitchen. It wasn't really a question. "Yes, thank you, dear," I said, my voice softer than I intended. We sat across from each other at her dining table. It was a beautiful table, long, made of dark, shining wood, too long for just the two of us. We sat at opposite ends, like we were at a business meeting. The distance between us felt like a whole field. She poured tea from a perfect porcelain pot into two perfect matching cups. The steam rose in a thin, silent line. She pushed one cup toward me, but she did not drink from her own. She placed her hands in her lap, then brought them up and folded them neatly on the table. It was the way people sit when they are about to say something important, or something difficult. I waited. I wrapped my hands around my cup, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. I had waited all my life. For her to be born, for her to come home from school, for her to be happy. Waiting never scared me. It was the not knowing what you were waiting for that could break your heart. She took a slow breath, like she was steadying herself. "Grandma," she began, her words coming out slowly, carefully. "I've been thinking a lot lately." I nodded. I tried to smile softly to make my face a safe place for her words. "I'm listening, my star," I said. "You know I love you," she continued, her eyes glancing at me then away. "And I'm grateful, truly I am." Grateful, that word again. It landed between us with a quiet thud. I've never liked that word when it comes from family. Love shouldn't need gratitude. It just is. "But my life it's different now," she went on, her hand making a small, vague circle in the air. She looked around the room, at the bare white walls, the modern art piece that looked like a blur of color, as if the room itself was part of her explanation. "My work, my friends, my routines, my whole world. Everything has changed." I said nothing. I just kept my eyes on her, letting her speak. My tea grew cooler in my hands. She took another breath, this one a little shakier. "When you visit, I know you mean well, you always do, but it's hard for me. It pulls me back." "Pulls you back?" I asked gently, needing to understand. "Back into that old life," she said, her voice dropping. "The one I worked so very hard to leave behind. I feel myself slipping back into that person, the one from that small, damp house. And I can't afford to slip, Grandma, not in my world." The words did not come fast. They were chosen, each one picked up, examined, and placed gently on the table between us, like pieces in a game I didn't know how to play. She leaned forward just a little. So, I've been thinking, I think it's better if visits are less frequent, and maybe shorter when they do happen. There it was. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't said in anger. There were no tears, no slammed doors. It was just a calm, clear sentence spoken in that quiet, clean room. A sentence that, without raising its voice, quietly closed a door. I felt my chest tighten, a sudden squeeze around my heart. But my face stayed still. I had learned long ago, back when life was about survival, how to keep pain from showing. How to smile when you're breaking inside. It's a skill you never forget. I see, I said, my voice low. Then, after a moment, I understand. My own voice surprised me. It sounded steady, almost peaceful. It didn't sound like the voice of someone who had just been asked to step gently out of her granddaughter's life. She looked relieved. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. A tiny breath escaped her lips. That small sign of relief that hurt me more than all her careful words. "It's not that I don't want to see you," she added quickly, as if reading my silence. "I'll always support you, Grandma, financially, anything you need at all, just say the word." Support. The word hung in the air between us, as if love could be neatly replaced with a monthly payment. As if a bank transfer could stand in for a hug, for a shared memory, for the sound of her laugh in my kitchen. I just nodded. What else was there to do? But inside me, something stirred. Memories began to rise, not with a roar, but like quiet ghosts coming to witness what was happening. I saw her first steps, right there on our cracked linoleum floor, her little arms waving for balance. I felt the memory of her small, warm fingers, holding mine tightly in the dark when she had a nightmare. And I heard, clear as a bell, her young voice, maybe 7 years old, looking up at me so seriously. "Don't worry, Grandma. When I grow up and get a big job, I'll take care of you. You'll never have to work again." I wondered, sitting at that long, cold table, if she remembered ever saying that. She stood up then. The movement was smooth, final. It signaled the end of the conversation. Our untouched cups of tea sat between us, now cold. "I'll walk you out," she said, her voice returning to that polite, even tone. At the white door, she turned to me. She opened her arms for a hug. It was automatic, a habit. I stepped into it. She hugged me lightly, her arms barely closing around my shoulders. It was brief, over in a second. She smelled like expensive perfume, and something else, something clean and unfamiliar. "Take care of yourself," she said, pulling back. "You too, my child," I whispered. And just like that, I was outside again. The door closed behind me with a soft, solid click. I stood on the step for a moment, the pale sky above me. Then I walked down the steps slowly, one at a time. My knees felt weak, like they might not hold me. I held onto the railing. I did not cry. The tears were there somewhere deep down, but they felt frozen, stuck. I took the bus home. I found a seat by the window and stared out without seeing. The city moved around me in a blur of color and light. People rushed along sidewalks, talking on phones, laughing with friends. Lives were continuing, moving forward. Mine felt like it had just gently stopped. At home, I didn't turn on many lights. I went straight to my room and sat on the edge of my bed. I placed my purse in my lap and just held it. The room, which had always been my cozy shelter, now felt smaller than it used to be. The walls felt closer. The ceiling felt lower. That night, sleep did not come easily. I lay in the dark and replayed her words, not to punish myself, but to understand, to make sense of the map that had led us here. Had I held on too tightly? Did I call too much? Did my love feel like a chain to her? Had I asked for too much? Was wanting to see her, to hear her voice, too great a demand? My mind traveled back through the years. I remembered every sacrifice. Staying up all night sewing to buy her a proper winter coat. Going hungry so she could have a full lunch to take to school. Saying no to myself so I could say yes to her 1,000 times over. And still, sitting there in the dark, I did not feel angry at her. Not even a little. I just felt old, worn out, like a book that has been read and loved, but is now being gently placed on a high shelf, too far to reach. The next morning, as I was unpacking my bag, my fingers touched a crisp, flat envelope tucked into the inside pocket. She must have placed it there quietly, when I wasn't looking. Maybe when she hugged me. I pulled it out. It wasn't sealed. I opened it. Money, more than the usual amount. Much more. I stared at the bills. They were clean and new. They had no history, no memory. I held them for a long time, sitting at my kitchen table. Then, without counting it, I folded the whole envelope in half, then in half again. I walked to my dresser, opened the bottom drawer, and placed it inside under my sweaters. I left it unopened. I didn't want to know the number. That number would only be a measure of the distance between us. For days after that, the house felt unbearably quiet. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was a thick, heavy silence. Even the steady tick-tock of the wall clock in the kitchen seemed too loud, too aggressive. I found myself holding my breath just to make less noise. I avoided calling her. I didn't want to cross a line I couldn't see. I didn't want to be the needy grandmother who couldn't take a hint. Weeks passed, then months. She was true to her word. An envelope arrived every month, regular as the moon. She sent short, careful text messages on holidays. Hope you're well. Thinking of you, take care. I always replied kindly and briefly. Thank you, dear, I am well. You take care too. Our communication became a quiet, distant dance, with steps we both knew by heart. One quiet afternoon, I decided to do a proper spring cleaning. I pulled an old cardboard box from the back of my bedroom closet. It was dusty, the corners softened with age. I didn't remember what was in it. I lifted the lid. Inside were photographs, not in albums, just loose, piled together. I lifted the first one to the light. It was her. She must have been 4 or 5. She was smiling a huge, gap-toothed smile, barefoot in the grass outside our old house. Her hair was a wild mess. Her eyes were squinted against the sun. Under the photos were papers, her school drawings, a crayon picture of 2 stick figures, a big one and a small one holding hands under a wobbly sun. At the bottom, in her childish handwriting, she had written, "Me and Grandma." Another page was just covered in crayon hearts. On a lined piece of paper, she had practiced writing my name over and over. Grandma, Grandma, Grandma. The letters were crooked, full of love. I didn't move to a chair. I just sat down right there on the floor, my back against the bed. I went through the whole box slowly, one memory at a time. And that was when I realized it. The truth washed over me, cool and clear. I had been holding on, so tightly, to a version of her that no longer existed. The little girl with the crayons, the teenager who needed my help, that girl was gone. She had grown into a woman I hardly recognized. And she wasn't just building a new life. She was running fast and far from a version of herself she did not want to remember. From the barefoot girl in the small, damp house. From the need, from the struggle, from everything that reminded her of where she came from. That was the moment something inside me shifted. It wasn't a crack or a break. It was a quiet settling. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't anger. It was acceptance. I finally understood something about love I'd been too close to see before. Love does not always mean closeness. It doesn't always mean being in the same room, sharing the same life. Sometimes, love means letting go. Quietly, without a fight. Letting the person you love most fly to a place you can never follow, and loving them enough to be happy they can fly at all. That night, with the box of memories still beside me, I took out a piece of my best writing paper and a pen. I wrote her a letter. Not to accuse her, not to make her feel guilty, not to beg for a different ending. Just to tell the simple, quiet truth. I told her I was proud of the woman she had become, that I never raised her so she would stay small, in a small house with a small life. I raised her to grow, and she had grown beyond anything I could have dreamed. I told her she did not owe me her presence. She only owed me her honesty, and she had given me that at the white door. I told her I would always, always love her, even from this new, quiet distance, that my love didn't need to be in the same room to be real. I did not mention the pain. I didn't write about the cold tea or the long bus ride home or the money in the drawer. She was already carrying enough weight. I didn't need to add mine. When I was finished, I folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and wrote her name on the front. Just her name. No return address was needed. The next morning, I walked to the post office and mailed it. I dropped it into the blue mailbox, heard it fall inside. Then I turned and walked home. And then I waited. Not for an answer, not for things to go back to how they were. I just waited for life to find its new shape, now that I had finally, gently, let go. The days after, I sent the letter felt lighter. Not happier, I wouldn't use that word. Happy is for birthdays and reunions. This was different, just lighter. Like I'd been carrying a heavy bucket of water for miles, and I finally found a place to set it down. My arms still ached from the weight they'd grown used to, but at least I could breathe again. It was as if something I had been holding tightly inside my chest for years, a clenched fist around a fragile hope, had finally loosened its grip. My ribs didn't feel so tight. I could take a full breath without that sharp little catch in my throat. I did not wait by the phone anymore. That old chair by the small table where the phone sat, I stopped treating it like a church pew. I did not jump at every sound, thinking it might be a message. I did not check the door at every passing car, imagining it was her coming to say she'd changed her mind. Instead, I returned to the small, quiet routines, the ones that had always carried me through life, long before I was a grandmother, back when I was just a woman trying to make it through the day. They were simple things, but they were mine. I woke early, just as the first gray light touched the window. I'd put the kettle on, listening to its gentle rumble build to a whistle. I made my tea, the plain black kind, and sat in my chair by the living room window. Not to watch for anything, just to watch. To see the morning arrive slowly. The paperboy on his bike, Mr. Henderson walking his old dog, the sky shifting from gray to pale blue. I'd think to myself, another day. You can do another day. I started walking again in the evenings. Short walks at first, just to the end of the street and back. My legs were stiff, my spirit was weary, but the air felt good. Then, as the weeks went on, the walks became longer. Around the block, down to the little park with the rusty swings. I'd watch the children play and feel the ghost of a smile on my face. I began to greet my neighbors properly. Mrs. Finch from next door, who was always losing her cat. Old Mr. Miller, who tended his roses like they were his children. I'd say, "Lovely evening," and sometimes they'd stop. They'd tell me little stories about their grandson's soccer game, about the price of tomatoes, about their arthritis. I listened, really listened, and I shared bits of my own stories only when they asked. It was a quiet exchange, a gentle giving and taking that asked for nothing in return. It was during one of these quiet walks that I realized something big. I realized how much of myself, my own wants, my own quiet thoughts, my own simple pleasures, I had quietly set aside, packed away in a box while I held space for others. First as a mother, then as a grandmother, always as a caretaker. My own identity had become a room I never entered, gathering dust in a house too busy with other people's lives. Now, with the door to that busy life gently closed, there was room again. Room for me. The silence wasn't an emptiness to be filled. It was a space to be lived in. One afternoon, I saw a notice in the window of the local elementary school. They needed volunteers to help children with reading. My heart gave a little jump. I stood there for a long time, looking at the faded paper. Then I went inside. It was just a few hours a week. I sat at a small table in a bright, noisy room that smelled of crayons and chalk. The children would come to me, one by one, their books in hand. They reminded me so much of her. The way they would sound out a difficult word, their brows furrowed in concentration. The way their faces would light up, that pure, instant sunshine of understanding, when they got it right. The way pride would soften their little faces, making them look both young and ancient at the same time. At first it hurt. It was a sweet, sharp ache. When a little girl with dark braids looked up at me with trusting eyes, I saw Alara at 6 years old. My throat would tighten. But I kept going. And slowly something began to happen. The hurt didn't go away, but it transformed. Holding space for these children, helping them unlock a new word, a new world, began to heal a crack in me. It was like I was tending a small garden in a place that had felt barren. I wasn't replacing my granddaughter. I was remembering that my love for her had always been about nurturing, and that was a thing I could still do. It could still live here in this new way. I began to understand, deep in my bones, what I had only known in my head before. Love does not disappear when it changes shape. It doesn't evaporate when the person you love walks a different path. It only asks you, quietly, patiently, to grow with it, to stretch your heart into a new shape to hold it. Weeks later, her reply came. It didn't come as a phone call, no ring to startle the quiet. It came as a text message, glowing on my phone screen in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. I picked up the phone, my hands steady for once. The message was short. "I got your letter, Grandma. I've read it many times." That was all. I read those 10 words over and over. I sat in my kitchen chair, the phone in my lap, and I was quiet for a very long time. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just absorbed it. She'd read it, many times. That meant my words had landed somewhere inside her. They hadn't bounced off the polished surface of her new life. They had found a way in. I did not reply right away. I didn't want to fill the space she had finally opened with my own neediness. I didn't want my next words to come from a place of desperate hope. "Does this mean you'll visit?" I wanted them to come from the new peace I was building, however fragile it was. A few days later, when the feeling was calm and clear, I wrote back. I kept it simple, the way truth often is. I meant every word. "Live well, my child." I almost wrote "my star," our old nickname, but I didn't. That was the child. I was writing to the woman now. After that, the distance between us remained. The miles, the silence, the separate lives, all of it was still there. But it felt different. The air in that space wasn't charged with my hurt and her guilt anymore. There was no tension in it, no waiting. It was just space, neutral ground. Sometimes she would send a photo, a picture of a beautiful meal on a plate in a restaurant I'd never go to, a view from a hotel window somewhere high above a city I didn't know. She never wrote much, just the photo. I began to see them for what they were, not boasts, but little windows. Her way of saying, "This is my world now, I want you to see it." I always replied with a single heart emoji. Nothing more, no questions, no demands, just an acknowledgement. "I see you, I see your world." I was learning a new way to measure love, not by how often someone appears at your door or how long they stay on the phone, but by how gently they let you be who you are and how gracefully you let them be who they've become. On my birthday, she surprised me. The phone rang in the morning. I saw her name on the screen. For a second, that old nervous flutter came back. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello." "Hi, Grandma." Her voice sounded different, softer around the edges, less rushed, like she'd carved out this time and put a wall around it. "Happy birthday," she said. "Thank you, Alara," I replied, using her proper name. It felt right. We spoke for maybe 10 minutes. It wasn't a long conversation by some standards, but for us, it was an ocean. We didn't talk about her work or her travel schedules. We didn't mention money. She asked me how I was sleeping. A simple, caring question. "Better lately," I told her truthfully. She asked what I was cooking these days. "Oh, a big pot of vegetable soup," I said. "It lasts all week." Simple things, the ordinary currency of a shared life. We were trading in it again, carefully, like two people relearning an old language. Before we hung up, there was a pause. Then she said, the words coming out quietly but clear, "Grandma, I hope you know I never meant to hurt you." I closed my eyes. I could see her, not in her sleek office, but as a girl who'd spilled milk and was afraid she'd be scolded. "I know," I said, my voice firm and gentle. "I know you didn't." And for the first time, I truly, completely did. Her distance wasn't a weapon. It was a shield. She wasn't pushing me away. She was protecting the self she'd fought so hard to build. Understanding that didn't take the sting away from the past, but it dissolved the last of the poison. That night, I slept deeply. A solid, dreamless sleep. I didn't toss and turn, chasing the ghost of the little girl in pigtails. When I thought of her, I no longer imagined the child she once was. I saw her as she is now, A woman, shaped by her sharp ambition, by her private fears, by the fierce, relentless need to protect the life she had built from nothing. And looking at that woman, I didn't just love her, I respected her. She had done what I'd taught her to do, survive, and then some. I stopped keeping the envelope of money separate, hidden away like a shameful secret. One day, I took it from the drawer. I opened it. I counted it. Then I went to the bank and deposited it. I used some of it to buy a new, comfortable pair of walking shoes. I used some to buy a stack of new books for the children at the school. I used it without guilt. Not because I needed it to survive anymore, but because I finally understood it for what it was, her way of staying connected. Her love language. It was clumsy. It was imperfect. It was nothing like the love language of stories and braided hair that we'd once shared. But it was hers now. And if I truly loved her and not just my memory of her, I had to learn to speak it, or at least to accept it when she spoke. One rainy evening in late autumn, I sat alone in my kitchen. The same kitchen that had once held 3 generations, me, my daughter, and a little girl with wide eyes. The rain tapped against the window, a steady, familiar rhythm. It was the same sound that used to frighten her. "Don't let the rain take the house, Grandma." I smiled at the memory. It didn't hurt. It felt warm, like a story about someone else I was fond of. And I realized something important then, sitting in the quiet with the rain for company. I had raised her with one main, burning goal: to survive, to be stronger than the circumstances she was born into, to be tougher than the world that wanted to tell her no. And she had done exactly that. She hadn't just survived, she had conquered. She had built a fortress where there had been a leaking roof. If that kind of survival, that kind of conquering, took her far from me, well, then that was the cost. It was the price of doing my job well. You don't teach a bird to fly and then cry when it doesn't stay in the nest. You watch it soar and feel the wind under your own heart. The kettle began to whistle softly on the stove. The room was warm, lit by a single lamp. I looked around at the walls that had seen so much life, so much love, and so much letting go. I whispered into the comfortable, empty room, my voice just for me and the ghosts of all our yesterdays. "You did well, Grandma." And for the first time in a very, very long while, I looked at my life, at the love I'd given and the love I'd released, and with a calm that felt like truth. I believed it. There are nights now, quiet ones, when I sit by the window in my favorite chair and think about everything that has passed. The years don't flash by like a movie. They settle around me, familiar as an old quilt, and I think about it all. Not with a sharp sadness that cuts, not with a heavy regret that bends your back. Just with understanding. A calm, quiet knowing that comes when the storm is finally over, and you're just looking at the changed landscape, learning its new shape. Life does not always circle back the way we imagine in our stories. We picture reunions, shared holidays, a return to how things were. But life isn't a circle, more often. It's a river. It moves forward. It carves new paths. And sometimes it asks us, gently or not, to let go of the shape it once had, to release the memory of the old riverbank and learn to swim in the new current. I still keep her old drawings in a box on my dresser, the one with the crayon hearts, the one that says me and Grandma in wobbly letters. I don't look at them every day, but I know they're there. I still remember, clear as a bell, the sound of her laughter when she was small, a giggle that started in her belly and bubbled up until the whole room felt brighter. Those memories, they are mine. They live inside me. They are the furniture of my heart. No distance, no white door, no polite conversation can ever take them away. They are my forever treasures. I've learned something important, maybe the most important thing. Children do not leave because they stop loving us. That's a parent's a grandparent. Worst fear, but it's usually not the truth. Sometimes they leave because they are running not from us, but from the person they were when they were with us. They are afraid of becoming who they once were. Afraid that if they look back for too long, if they touch that old life, it might stick to them. It might slow down their hard-won sprint into the future. And that fear, it isn't cruel. It isn't selfish. It is just human. It's the fear of any creature that has fought its way out of a shell. It never wants to be small and vulnerable again. So I do not wait by the door anymore. Not the physical one and not the one in my heart either. I keep it open, the light on, a space cleared, but I do not stare at it. I don't measure my days by its silence. If she comes, she comes. It will be a gift. If she doesn't, I still live. My world did not end where hers began. It continues. I water my plants and talk to them. I read books slowly, savoring each chapter. I cook simple meals that make the whole house smell warm and alive, onion and garlic and herbs. The scent is a kind of company. I laugh with my neighbors over the fence. I listen to their troubles. I help where I can, because helping reminds me I still have something to give. And sometimes, in the late afternoon when the sun slants through the window just right, painting gold stripes on the floor, I feel it. Peace. It settles gently around my shoulders, quiet and warm, like a shawl I didn't know I was wearing. People still ask about her. At the market, on my walks. How's that brilliant granddaughter of yours? They say her name with such pride, like she's a local celebrity. I smile, a real smile, one that reaches my eyes. Yes, I say, my voice steady and sure. She's doing very, very well. That is enough. It is the truth, and it is all that needs to be said. I look back on it now, the long nights, the worry, the love poured out like water on thirsty ground. I raised her with nothing but love, patience, and a stubborn, fighting hope. And you know what? Those things did their work. They weren't wasted. They built something. She used them to build a life. A big, bright, impressive life. And I used the same journey to build a heart. A heart strong enough and soft enough to finally let her go. Not every story ends with everyone sitting around the same table, laughing. Some stories, the truest ones, end with a quiet understanding. They end with a strength you find not in holding on, but in opening your hands. And that is not failure. That is not losing. That is life, living it on its own terms, not the fairy tale ones. If there is one thing I have learned, one piece of wisdom I would press into the hand of any loving heart, it is this. Love is not proven by how close someone stays to you. It is not measured in miles or minutes on the phone. Love is proven by how gently, how bravely, we allow them to walk their own path, even when that path leads them out of our sight. And even when they stop looking back. We can still look forward. With grace in our steps. With dignity in our silence. With a love so big it doesn't need to be seen to be real.